GraceandTruthRadio.world proudly presents Life Coaching for Men, improving their relationships with their wives and learning to communicate for a more fulfilling and satisfying marriage. And now, Men Loving Well, with Christian counselor, author, and relationship coach, Dr. Jim Slaughter.
It's my pleasure to get back with you today with two good friends of mine. Greg Matthews, welcome to you today. And then I have John King with me today, Dr. John A. King. Both of these guys are experts in the field of trauma, P.T.S.D. A lot of John's experience has to do with human trafficking that we're hearing more and more about all the time these days. And John has had an opportunity to speak to that issue and has been a part of some filmmaking that highlights that, bringing it to public attention. Hey, I want to mention John's book. I'd mentioned it a couple of times, but Dr. John A. King, hashtag deal with it. Living Well with PTSD. One of the things I like most about your book, John, is that you just kind of you take a more of a casual approach to it. You tell your story. It's not like you have a particular agenda. You don't. And you've said that this is not the kind of self-help stuff that you might be looking for if you pick up my book, right? It's different from that. And yet, good night, the help that people get, they must get when they hear your story and see what happened to you.
Well, what I tried to do is I tried to recount what I was going through, and it was actually very traumatic healing to write it, because I took myself through, okay, what was it like when I had total recall and my marriage was imploding and having these visions of these orgies and the things that were done to me 24/7. I couldn't get out of inability to sleep. And so how did I cope with that? Because if I was trying to cope with that then and I learned some things, there's someone somewhere, like when you would wake up in the middle of the night, that needs to know that that's okay, you know, that we go through that, but also here is how that fella did with it. And it would give them, I was hoping, like a little benchmark or a little pebble. So here is a way. So the book is not linear. It's not chronologically accurate. It's more an evolution of how I became whole. And you would know with PTSD, you seem to take 2 steps forward and 85,000 steps backward, and then you crawl forward. And I remember the day that I made the decision, instead of trying to walk forward, I would fall forward. Because then I realized if I fell forward, I was 6 feet further from where I was, and I could just crawl to my feet, and the likelihood of falling again was less. And so that gave me permission to just do these small things. Yeah. And that's what the book tries to capture, is that I'm still a work in progress, and give yourself to do that. But here are the things that I found work. And treat it like a smorgasbord. Take and pick the things that you like, discard it, and add to it, because that's what I did.
What happens, I think, with your book, John, in particular, people read this. I think people would have hope for themselves, really, and what can happen to them as they read about what happened to you, because you're very open and honest about. You'll say I have 30 good days and 1 bad day, and then we move on. You have provided a really great opportunity for people to learn how to do that, how to move through their stuff. We want to begin focusing a little bit more specifically on the issue of PTSD. I wanted that to be a major portion of our show today, and because both of you guys have experienced that in huge ways. And here's an interesting thing. I've known through the years that when I start to focus in on something, in other words, in my studies, in my research, and my reading or whatever, God has a way of bringing people to me who need to know what I know. And it's just the most amazing thing. And I was asked to teach a university course in stress and anger management. I did that, and then all of a sudden I have all these guys with severe anger issues coming to me to say, what do I do? And stress and all that kind of thing. And after I met you guys, and you guys came into my life virtually at the same time. And so...
Sorry about that.
No.
That's a bit overwhelming.
Not looking for an apology. It's a wonderful thing. It's a blessing. But the thing is, now I find that I have guy after guy after guy coming to me in our office, either saying, I have PTSD, what do I do? Wow. Or they'll say, these are the issues that are going on with me. These are the symptoms that I have. And they'll line up they'll say, I depression, I have anxiety, I I feel like people are looking over my shoulder and wondering what I'm thinking, or they want to know what I'm doing, and I have insomnia. I can't sleep. I have fear of social situations. I can't go to a Ranger game. I break out in a cold sweat. I rage all the time, and I don't even know when it's coming. And I'm thinking, oh, well, okay, I kind of think maybe I know what's going on with you, right? And so I've got these guys coming. People want to know what this is and what to do about it. So maybe you guys can help us with that.
Well, I will tell you that I like to keep things very, very simple.
That's good.
In my positions, whether it's anti-terrorism, counterterrorism, if I can identify the threat, then I can come up with a solution to deal with the threat.
Good point.
Okay, so I keep it really, really simple. And if we're looking at the threat of what PTSD and what it brings, is it brings a lot of shame, it brings a lot of guilt, it brings isolation from an impacted event. So if I can understand that threat, what is it that I can do? I'll keep it really simple, is I have found the most healing. I don't know that I'll ever get completely over it, but I'm becoming at peace with it, so I can live. The biggest thing is being in relationships that you can trust people to be able to start to communicate about it, and ultimately to have that relationship with God in heaven. That's
connection sounds huge.
The connection is
right.
It's huge, and I've been scarred by some significant things. I'll share one thing with you. So, 2 weeks on the pile, I look down and I see a $100 bill covered in dried blood. I pick it up and I look at it. It says, "In God We Trust." Here's a U.S. American currency. Some Americans' blood on this $100 bill, and I'm
now you're talking about 9/11, right? The site. Or
on the pile.
Yeah. That's what you mean by the pile.
The responders out there, they know what I'm talking about.
Know.
So, 9/11.
Yeah.
So I look down and I see this, and it completely crushes me because, one, I love my country, I'm a patriot.
Yep.
But at that point, I'm hearing 3,000 Americans below me crying out, and it was very trauma to me. But it put me on a different trajectory. That was good in a sense. So what I will say is, it doesn't matter what you're going through, the wounding and everything that you have. Coming back and finding those people that you can open up and begin to expose your heart and find healing, or the beginning of healing, is the biggest thing that I've done.
Wow. Thanks, Greg.
Let me show you Facebook and Instagram. Here's my latest T-shirt. My P.T.S.D does not equal postal. And speaking to your point of shame, I think there really is, there's a massive stigma around mental health as it is. And every time there's a shooting or there's a stabbing or there's something, the first thing they do is they identify mental health, and more than likely they somehow are going to wrangle in post-traumatic stress disorder. And that means that, and someone was talking about after this last horrific shooting that happened, how, it's PTSD and the red flag laws, that's why This Is Red came out and they did all that. And here's my thought, I actually believe that our veterans with PTSD, or our law enforcement with PTSD, statistically, they're more likely, veterans, 30 a day, to take their own life than to go out and engage in a mass shooting. Right. And yet our veterans or anyone else with PTSD, they want to disarm us. They want to point the finger at us and give us another layer of actually isolating us, instead of realizing that we are more in contact with what we feel and what we go with than some hopped up kid on some sort of opioid.
Right.
And I think we have to confront the shame and the stigma. And in a sense, you were talking earlier on about being prepared to talk about it. I think we have to.
Yes.
And I remember going to a dentist. When I was 11, I was taken to a dentist. He was a sadist, and he pulled my teeth out without any stuff. I have a problem going to the dentist, and it's like a legitimate problem going to the dentist.
Yeah.
And when I went through all this, I would hold my breath. I would go, and then the last time I went to a dentist, I thought, forget it. I'm not going to increase my stress. So I went in there. He was a nice old guy, and I said, "G'day, doctor. My name's John King, and when I was 11, I was sexually abused by a dentist, pulled my teeth out. So I have a real problem going under and being in a dentist. I just want to let you know."
Right.
And I'd like my wife to be here, and I won't take any opioids. Thanks very much. And he looked all shocked.
Yeah.
But what he did was, he didn't make allowances for me, but he took into condition what I'd been through. So inside, I allowed my scars of shame to turn into medals of honors. It's like, I'm not inflicting this on someone, but if I need a little bit of consideration, and that starts with me saying, okay, I need to talk to someone, get over my embarrassment and put this out there, then I think we're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And I think we should do that, because that gives everybody else who doesn't have the platform you have of being an author, television star, all that sort of stuff. You've got a platform, and if you're not being bold in giving people permission, then who's the girl or the guy that don't have that platform?
Absolutely. And that is, you said it brilliantly, and I will tell you that what I call that is pressing into the pain. Because until you press into the pain and through the pain, you'll never get past the pain and being able to go back to living in joy. And so absolutely what you're saying is true.
Awesome.
What's that shirt you have? Yeah, you have a shirt saying something like, I enjoy my demons, or something like that. What is that?
Sometimes I wrestle with my demons, and sometimes we cuddle.
There you go. That's John's way. The brilliant John A. Keane, Ph.D.
They're on our website if you want one. Wear this. You know what it does for you? Like, people move out of your way in shopping centres. They see it with PTSD is not posted, and they go, stay away from the crazy guy. You know what I mean?
I guess I'm wondering, is there a difference? What difference would there be between post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, what we're talking about, and some other maybe degree of trauma?
So it's simple. It's PTSD, post-traumatic stress, trauma after an event. That will normally last for about 6 to 8 weeks, maybe 6 months. I know Melissa had a car accident, and she had a fear of driving for about 6 or 8 weeks, but after that, she found herself managing it, rethinking it, working it through. If that had still been around after 6 months, and that would have become, they call it, classified as a disorder.
Okay.
Or whatever the new classification, but it is this thing. So it's the ability long-term for the brain to process memories and to file them accordingly. I often think of it like a filing cabinet. And with things like a grizzly attack, you've got car crash, you've got, stress financially, unable to find a bill, and then you've got going out for a walk one day and being mauled close to death by a very large brown furry animal. You really can't file that in great holiday experiences.
Right.
Or like 9/11, you can't.
Right.
And what I see PTSD is like, it's a stack of papers on your desk, and sometimes the window of life opens up and blows that crap everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And then you just run around, and that's that time of panic and trying to do it, and you put it down, and sometimes you're going to reshuffle it. And I don't think it ever goes away. We get better to keeping the window down.
Yeah.
But I think that's how I view PTSD as opposed to just trauma.
Ann and I checked out some of your YouTube videos last night, and we had before that too. But one of the things that you mentioned, just a metaphor, you said having PTSD is, and trying to live one day at a time. It's like having all these stacks of files and papers on your desk at the end of the day, and you can't get to them right now. And so what you're going to do is you're just going to take and shove them all off onto the floor, and you'll do it tomorrow or something. And so there's more stuff than you can handle, and so you just do it that way.
What I'm interested in reading Greg's book, because with what he went through as a kid, then with 9/11, and then so the focus of this book is the grizzly, but you know that's not where this thing started for him.
Okay. Exactly.
And that for me,
It's like an onion, right?
Yeah,
You got
just,
to peel it back.
How does that work? Because 9/11, mate, that is, you brought
Well,
this
and like I was saying earlier, Greg, your life in some ways has been filled with trauma, because you've gone from one huge traumatic event to another, and you're always waiting for the next one around the corner, right? And so there are a number of questions left. One of the things we know is important for people who think they may have PTSD and trying to work through it is community, drawing someone to themselves that they can share their story with, and a trustworthy person. Greg, you're in a position where, because of what you do, what you're responsible for, you actually have had decades, really, of trauma, one thing right after another, because it's your work. It's what you do, right?
Yes.
And so we were wondering, John, you and I were talking about what does a person do? How are we affected by it when it just happens all the time? You're in a position where actually you're looking for the next foot to drop, right, with this stuff.
Yeah, it's I want to thank you. Thank you for having me on here. And my heart. My heart is for first responders, military,
right.
Emergency managers. I've spent the last pretty much 35 years trying to do what I can to protect and defend the people in our country. I've been involved in anti-terrorism, counterterrorism, and that's currently one of my roles. But what I will tell you is that the 21 years in the fire department that I spent, I was there on everybody's worst day. And you see every single way that people can die and the suffering and the impact. And I believe that first responders, law enforcement, police, anti-terrorism, counterterrorism professionals, they literally are willing to trade a piece of who they are for each traumatic event that they go through. They're trying to make a difference in somebody's life. And so after a while, you end up not only trading away who you are, so it becomes difficult to even process life, but it actually, you begin to take responsibility and blame yourself for the things that you weren't able to make a difference in, like the World Trade Center. That pushed me into a different trajectory from just not response, but also prevention. And that was a good thing. But what I wore was the fact that I wasn't able to do anything to prevent that. And the guilt and everything that came along with it impacted me and still continues to impact me over my life. And so, once again, I go back to keeping things very simple. I have found the ability to love myself, finally.
Wow.
And that has been the most healing factor in dealing with the PTSD. I was never able to give myself a break, to allow myself to say, Greg, you cannot rescue, you cannot save everybody. And I never let myself do that. So
I think, can I just jump in there, buddy?
Absolutely.
I think it's giving yourself a break in that context, and also giving yourself a break when you're in the process of getting well, because we will fail at this thing. We will make mistakes at this thing. And I think the lessons you learn there are the lessons you have to carry forward. You come home days from work and you'll be stressed out, and you won't react well. Or, I remember once I was out with Melissa and we walked into a candle shop, I think it was on our honeymoon, and I smelled a fragrance, and it reminded me of what was done to me as a child.
Wow.
And I just lost it. And it's not her fault. It's not. And you'll have those things that'll just set things off.
Yes.
A lot of vets, a lot of coppers talk about, the fireworks, the other bits and pieces. And I'm sure, every time you hear a fire truck goes by, it rattles your bell.
Yes.
And so I think that need to be comfortable with who you are and where you're up to. And I talk about it in my book. We spend all our life being told to live from the outside in. And I think we have to come to a terms where we have to live from the inside out.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to find to talk to Greg about, is because at some point, and I think that's what you're saying, and I'm looking forward to Wild Awakening, it's when you had to come to peace with who you were and comfortable with who you were, that everything else started to fall into place.
It absolutely was that, and fell into place, and finding out that not only my dad in heaven, but my dad on earth actually loved me, even when I was convinced that they didn't love me because of, whatever it was, being unable to do anything that would please them. It was performance driven, and that was just from a wounding that came from as a kid.
Yeah.
Okay. We haven't talked too much about triggers. There are a bunch of other things we haven't talked about yet. We've only got 60 seconds left. But let me just say to everybody who's out there who came today and who was willing to and desired to hear what we had to say, thank you for listening in. We really, really appreciate you as a listening audience. But it's been wonderful. It has been so fun to be with these guys. Just in talking about this stuff, I feel close to you, and I've known you before this time, of course. Thanks, guys, for coming.
Pleasure,
Appreciate
man.
you so much. Let's do it again.
Buy Greg's book. He's awesome.
Thank you again for joining us. Men Loving Well airs live every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Central Time on graceandtruthradio.world. If you would like to contact or coach with Dr. Jim Slaughter, reach out to him on Facebook.com, Living Well Show. Email him at jslaughterphd@yahoo.com or contact him at his clinic, Life Solutions, 817-232-1363. We look forward to seeing you again next week here on Men Loving Well.
Life Solutions Coaching and Counseling in Fort Worth, Texas is a full-service wellness clinic providing individual, group, and family counseling, one-on-one coaching for life and wellness, and naturopathic treatments of medical massage therapy combined with essential oils to ensure you reach your health and wellness goals. Sessions are available in person or by phone. Get started on your new life today. Just call 817-232-1363 or go to lifesolutionscoachingandcounseling.com or email them at lifesolutionscc@yahoo.com.